Hi, and welcome to Cabrillo Voices, a program produced by students in my broadcast writing course. Today, we take on a pretty big issue for a lot of students, and that is student debt. Back when I was in college, many of us had debt couple $1,000s. Now that can be in the couple hundreds of thousands of dollars. How is that affecting these students' lives? We're going to hear a discussion about that next by my students at Cabrillo College. Thanks for watching.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Allen for Cabrillo Voices, a show produced by Rachel Goodman's broadcast writing class. According to the New York Times, Americans owe $1.3 trillion in student loans, and this figure is rising. Many members of our community struggle with this burden. You might not even know it. Even in the handout state of Sweden, where tuition is free, the typical student owes the equivalent of $20,000. Back home, it's much the same, with a small number of students owing as much as $100,000. The question we hope to answer today is this a student debt crisis? And if so, what can we do about it? With me today to discuss this, I have Caleb, Nick, and Cullen. So, is this a crisis?
Absolutely. I mean, it's growing, and it's mainly affecting the youth, so I'd say it's a big problem.
Yeah, the amount of student debt is ridiculous, and the fact that it just keeps going up. I mean, schools are definitely run as a business, and they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I would say that it's of course it's a crisis because it's insane that people that are striving for a higher level of education can't really because it costs them sometimes $20, $30, $40, $50, $100,000 just to get that higher education.
And how do you think this is affecting students? What kinds of majors they choose? What kind of life decisions they make?
Personally, I'm an art student, and so it kind of affects me personally, and it's kind of ridiculous because I know that my major isn't necessarily going to earn me the most money, and that I know some majors will earn you more money, and so it's sometimes makes it harder to pick for students.
I've definitely looked at jobs. I've thought about going to college for certain things, looked at jobs and see that on average they earn $30,000 a year, and I'm like, how am I going to pay off my college debt? And I've just completely, excluded that job from my book of what I could do in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still looking to find out my path, but it narrows it down, makes it very easy, but kind of hard at the same time because I can't really follow my passion.
Are there any strategies for those of you with debt or people that you know who have debt that they use to finance their education, jobs, work, scholarships?
Yeah, I mean, if you can get a scholarship, you're psyched, but a lot of times that's just for sports and really strong academic students. So.
I know there is financial aid. Personally, I'm actually not lucky enough to qualify for financial aid, but I know that does offer assistance for many students. It's often it's not the entire tuition, but it certainly does give assistance.
Okay.
I actually do qualify for financial aid, but the amount of hoops they make you jump through makes it almost not worth it. I've spent, hours and hours filling out paperwork and calling my mom, who lives an hour and a half away, to get her information, and it's back and forth, and it becomes so difficult that you don't even have time for your schoolwork in the beginning.
Yeah, I would agree that paperwork can be pretty intense. So as I said before, even Swedish students with no tuition costs also have national debt. What can we learn from other countries in order to help this situation?
Well, I think one of the things that we can learn from Sweden is that they have a longer term to pay back. That they have 25 years to pay back their loans, while American students only have 10 years. And so just on that basic principle, payments are quite much higher, and it's kind of crazy.
I think if the government looked at it less of a burden and more of an investment, if we have the means to actually spend money in our society and we're not paying back tons and tons of debt, then we're giving back to the government either way.
A recent Federal Reserve study showed a direct correlation between rising government aid and rising tuition rates. Do you think that government might have a little bit of culpability in this issue?
I would say it's a difficult topic, but there's a certain level to it. Yes, I would say they are partially responsible, not entirely responsible, but partially responsible, and that yes, it does, but it's more like the people that are running the colleges. They see that the government is giving more assistance, and so they raise tuition rates. So although the government is not directly doing it, it is a direct effect of what they are doing.
I'd have to agree on that. That maybe it could be a helpful source, financial aid, but because schools are run as a business, they want to make more money on it. And so if they see the government's giving more money, then they might raise their tuition rate so that whoever owns the colleges makes more as well.
Do you think that increasing financial aid options or subsidizing education further might end up with even higher tuition rates?
Subsidizing education. Well, I think maybe the government could, instead of financing loans or giving students direct money for tuition, maybe they could put regulations in effect to keep tuition down, or even go for some of the more extreme example of just making education totally free.
It's definitely a possibility. There's I don't know, there are definitely some financial aid programs, so there needs to be more things so that people can make money to actually get right out of college and start working.
I don't have a comment on that.
Most student loans are provided by the government. Do you think that, private innovations that we've had in financing things like houses or cars, such tools as leveraging or securitization, insuring certain loans might make it cheaper and lower interest to get student loans?
Personally, I'm not an economist, so I actually, unfortunately don't have much information about the topic. I don't know about you guys.
Personally,
Yeah, my own experience with any sort of loans is my older brother buying a car, and it's just a matter of having credit, and student loans don't even count as credit. Even though you're paying it back and you're paying it back monthly, credit card companies don't see it the same, so I don't really have any experience with that kind of debt, no.
A lot of a recent article in the Boston Globe noted that many students are putting off buying houses, buying cars because of their student loans. If we were to make student loans act more like any other kind of credit, do you think that might be a boost to the economy?
I do think that it definitely could. Again, I'm not an economist, so I don't know that much about it, but I think that something should be done, and that it's crazy that 10% of students will come out of college saying that some of their life events have been delayed by 5 years or more just because they have so much student debt.
Yeah, well, I think in terms of buying houses, it's not that possible in the first place, or at least I'm from the East Bay, so I see housing rates going up and up and up. But if it was run the way so that student debt counted, if you can pay off your student debt monthly and you make the payments on time, it should count towards your credit, and it should be the same as other credit.
Alrighty. I think we have some voices from our community here, and if we want, maybe we should take a minute to listen to some of our audio.
Cullen Ridgway, how long do you expect to be paying off your debt?
20 years.
And how old will you be by then?
70.
Do you find that the benefits of a college education outweigh the cost of student debt?
The benefit of being able to work in my chosen field and being able to do work that's rewarding is high, but the cost of student debt is too high because the interest should be lower. The banks themselves pay lower interest than students who have less ability to pay.
How does student debt affect you?
It affects me by having a lot on my mind. Every time I make a purchase, I know that I'm just having more money owed. So school is very expensive, and even just buying paper and the basics, and especially textbooks, I have a lot of debt now, and it's very hard for me just to pay my monthly bills and have debt on top of that.
How much student debt do you have, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm a senior in high school, so I don't have any student debt yet. But just applying to colleges around the country right now, I'm already spending a lot of money taking the SAT and the ACT, and I've also spent a lot of money taking AP tests and sending scores for ACT and SAT and AP and all the other A things. That's cost a lot of money. It's not student debt, but it's already kind of racking up, and it's sort of ironic that I'm paying so much for a lot of places that I know I probably maybe won't even get into, and it doesn't even make a difference, and all that money just kind of flew out the window towards their facilities, and I don't even get the benefits of it.
How much student debt do you have, and how do you feel about that?
I don't have any student debt, but I do have FAFSA, which is nice to have, and not have to worry about overly priced textbooks or having to pay for classes or anything like that. But I do know people who do have to take on debt to be able to go to school. I have a friend who spends like $60,000 either a semester or a year to go to school. And it's hard for him because he wants to get an education, but he also doesn't want to be in crippling debt for the rest of his life. And so trying to balance that and find scholarships for him is really hard. And I know he struggles a lot with that.
Cool. And then, how do you suppose we fix this student debt crisis?
Well, I think college should be free because I don't think we should be punished for wanting to have a better education. I think education is really good for everyone. It's good for the economy, it's good for politics, it's good for social change. There's nothing bad about being educated, so I think one thing that we could do is have school be free or highly subsidized by the government. And as for getting rid of the debt that people currently have, I think they should have the lowest interest rate possible and have really flexible payment plans to be able to pay those off in a reasonable amount of time.
Thanks very much, and I'll see you next time.
Wow. So the person you interviewed, she mentioned how student debt is affecting even her decision to go into college. Do you find that maybe in your own personal experience, or people you know, they might have been even discouraged to further their education based on the debt load they might take on?
Yeah, personally, I'm actually looking into applying to several colleges, and I know that each of them has somewhere in the range of like $50,000 a year just to go to them. And as she was saying, it's crazy how much we're paying just to like apply to those. It's like, and even I went on a couple college visits over the summer, and I'm also fortunate enough to have family members in that area. But had I not been able to, it would have cost more money to, go down there, get a hotel. You have to have all the extra expenses, and it's just kind of baffles me how insane that is.
I personally have considered, I didn't go straight to college out of high school. I went and worked 2 years as a welder. And when I decided I wanted to seek higher education, I came to Cabrillo College. But even now in Cabrillo College, and I know I'm committed to doing all my GEs, I considered just getting, the AA or whatever the lower level degree is. Associate's degree, and going back to work, and it's just so expensive.
Yeah, well, personally, I think that, I'm not focusing on the negative. I think that a lot of kids right out of high school, they just want to jump into a 4-year school, and I don't know, there's so many great programs at our local community colleges. I feel like a lot of people could really utilize those and spend some time actually figuring out what they want to do.
Yeah, I agree. In my own personal experience, I felt a lot of peer pressure, a lot of my colleagues were going to places like Stanford, Columbia, and you get this pressure, to perform, to go to an East Coast school, which I did. And I found that I had made a mistake. Not only did I incur, some amount of debt. Luckily, I'm almost done paying it off, even because it was just a year. I also wasn't happy there, and I decided to come back and do a little bit more community college. Now transferring over to the UC system. So I definitely feel like peer pressure is definitely something people experience.
Yeah, I went to a very academic high school, and so almost everyone in my high school, except, the kids that people consider to screw up, maybe myself, went to a four-year college, or at least went to community college. But I personally have never regretted going straight into the workforce. And you go through college, and by the time you're out of the college system, you have no work experience, but you have a lot of education. It kind of doesn't market you well to most employers. They look at you, and all you have is, you've been on your parents' paycheck, you've been going to school, but you've never actually experienced the real world. And so my experience working has been humbling, to say the least, but has really opened my mind to what the world is going to be, and that's how I base my college education.
Anyone have anything else to add?
I think that it is important to acknowledge that even though community colleges are cheaper, that I've actually found some data saying that even students graduating with an associate's degree from a community college do incur some amount of debt. It's not the same. Yeah. It's not the same amount of debt as you get out of a 4-year college, but I still found a number around $7,000 with people coming out of public community colleges. 38% of them having debt, and out of private community college, 90% of those people having debt, around $7,000 again, and that's personally that's just weird to me. It seems like Cabrillo and other community colleges should be cheap enough where students shouldn't have to go into debt. Like, we should be able to just go there. Community members should be able to just go there and learn and get up on their skills and whatnot. And obviously for some people that is not the way it works.
A lot of the folks in our voices from the community mentioned the high interests in loans. On one hand, students are a major liability for people financing them. They're definitely a risky subject to put money on. On the other hand, it does make it a lot harder to get education when there's a much higher interest rate than the market rate of interest.
Yeah, it's definitely high. I personally, luckily, I have a large family that's very nice, and so when I needed money, I went and just wrote out, I kind of wrote out a piece of paper saying, this is what I'm taking from you, and this is how I'm going to pay you back. So I avoided paying interest. But the reason I did that is because I watched so many people paying these ridiculous interest rates, and like my brother's girlfriend, I guess, was addicted to online shopping or something for a little bit. She's accumulated a lot of credit card debt, and the interest that she's paying, especially on a major credit card company, is ridiculously high, and it's impossible to keep up with it.
I mean, what are some solutions?
What are some solutions?
I mean, obviously a lot of our politicians can't figure that out.
Yeah. Personally, I don't really have any solutions. I would say that we should, keep that interest rate lower because, people are really in the end just trying to get a higher education, and that's, in the end, that's a good thing for us all. It may not, direct us, may not, have influence on us directly, but it's, it's baffling because there's a higher level of education benefits us all. We have more skills. It creates more money flow, and whatnot.
Yeah. Let's go to some video. Maybe we can see what other members of our community have said about this issue.
How much student debt are you in, and how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm one of the very, very fortunate people whose parents were able to pay for my education as long as I went to CSU, the state college. system. And so I went to San Diego State. My parents paid for everything. I wasted a lot of time and money and didn't get my degree. And then I went back to San Jose State later because it was affordable, paid for it myself, and got my degree. So I feel extremely fortunate to not have debt, but I think I'm probably in a minority for people that went to a 4-year university.
When I went to school, tuition for my first semester was, I think, $450. And while I was actually in that semester, something happened at the state level, and they lowered the tuition to $375 a semester. So I paid $750 a year from the time I was a junior in college until the time I got my master's degree 4 years later.
Now, of course, the costs are 20 times what they were when I went to college. We purport to be a democratic society where if you just work hard enough, you can achieve the American dream. But the reality is that that's not true unless you have access to education. Education is the bridge that allows you to reach middle class or higher. Access to education is incredibly important, and we cannot, this is not sustainable. What we're doing right now is not sustainable. And so something needs to change.
How do you solve our, how do you make that change, I guess?
Yeah. So I think the answer to that, in my perception, is that a democratic society is based upon having an educated voting populace, period. It is not in our self-interest to make education unaffordable, period. Education should be free for everyone at every level that they want to go to achieve what they want to do, period.
I think I would propose solving it something like in other countries that have socialized medicine, that we would be taxed and there would be revenue for schools, and schools would be supported to keep their programs, and also there'd be more oversight over how schools spend their money, so that it was spent on the education of students and not necessarily on some of the other programs.
And I don't mean to be repetitive, but we have to make education free and accessible for everyone. And it has to be quality education. You can't just make community colleges accessible. You have to make every college accessible. And the only way to do that is to make education free. Period.
Other countries do it, so why can't we?
Well, those were some really good interviews. Thank you, Caleb, for bringing those in. A lot of them we're talking about how education should be free. Free is definitely a loaded word, especially when you consider that nothing is really truly free. One thing that I found in my research is that a lot of students they use their financing and student loans and incur a lot of debt because of outside factors, not paying for tuition, but for living expenses. From your personal experience or any research you've done, yeah.
Well, I would say that, yes, those scholarships and whatnot, all that money does go towards definitely other things. I was looking at schools again, and I was looking at actually UCLA, and I saw that the tuition there is, about $13,000. It's a little bit less. But then I was also doing some research into housing and whatnot, making a big graph. And then I saw that housing for UCLA is $15,000. It's actually more than the tuition is itself. And that was like a moment of realization for me. It was very weird. I realized that it's not quite the same situation everywhere. But in the end, it's about the same. That money does go towards other things. It does go towards everyday things. I would say that it does majority go towards tuition and housing, but it definitely does go to benefit students every day.
It's funny how living in more central areas around more opportunities, more community colleges, more maybe even 4-year colleges, the closer you are to these areas with high levels of opportunity, the more you're paying in rent, and so it actually kind of cuts it down, and you end up paying I've paid up to $900,000 or $900 a month in rent, and for like a small room in Santa Cruz, and it gets really ridiculous and it's not affordable.
Yeah, that's just insane.
Yeah.
Nick?
I mean, I'm not paying any bills yet. I'm just fresh out of high school, but I can definitely see if I was moving away, it's going to be quite the task just to find somewhere to live while I learn. Yeah.
Would you agree that definitely outside factors, rent, taxes, the availability of good jobs is an even more important issue than perhaps tuition?
Yeah, I would say that I know that for me, I've actually been lucky enough to have some jobs outside of schools, but in those same school searches that I've been making for after Cabrillo, that some of those schools don't really want me to work outside of class. So I'm looking into a theater major. They don't really want me to be working on other theater shows after or outside of school while school is going on. And that kind of seems weird to me. It kind of seems like that would be the extra boost I would have in money for what I have going for me.
Yeah. Definitely closing in here, running out of time. But thank you all. Well, that's about all the time we have. It's a pleasure to have all of you, and I'd like to thank Community TV for making this happen. It's been a presentation by Cabrillo College's broadcast writing class. If any of this perks your interest, I encourage you to check out Cabrillo College. There's course catalog for this and other great classes.